Question number 3, Ms. Nixie LAM. Thank you, President. Last month, the Office of the Ombudsman published an investigation report on the government's work in combating cruelty to animals, highlighting issues such as insufficient guidelines and hasty closure of cases in the enforcement work of the Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department. In this connection, will the government inform this Council? 1. Given that the authorities briefed this Council on the key proposals to amend the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Ordinance in May 2022, of the reasons why the legislative amendment proposals have not yet been formally submitted, whether it will undertake to complete the amendments or implement them in phases within this term of government? If so, the timetable, if not, the reasons for that. 2. Whether the authorities will consider enacting an animal welfare law and prioritizing legislation to safeguard the welfare of domestic animals, ensuring that persons responsible for domestic animals must take reasonable measures. If so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. 3. Given that cases of alleged cruelty to animals involving primary and secondary students have occurred one after another in recent months, of the details of the authorities' efforts to educate students on caring for animals, whether they have plans to provide training for teachers and update teaching materials, if so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Environment and Ecology. President, the government has been curbing acts of cruelty to animals through stringent enforcement and preventive work such as education. On enforcement, under the current division of work within the government, the Hong Kong Police Force is responsible for handling emergency cases, whereas non-emergency cases reported through platforms including the 1823, such as reports on providing insufficient food, are followed up by the Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department, or AFCD. The Office of the Ombudsman earlier published an investigation report on the government's work in combating cruelty to animals, which acknowledges that the AFCD's investigations into cases of cruelty to animals are currently constrained by its enforcement powers, as it cannot enter premises to carry out investigations, and put forward various recommendations regarding the AFCD's various areas of work. And that includes the follow-up of reports, case monitoring, and collaborative efforts to combat animal cruelty. The AFCD accepts all of the recommendations of the report and is actively following up on various improvement measures, including enhancement of case handling workflows, strengthening internal monitoring mechanisms, and enhancement of professional training for frontline staff. The department will continue to work with the police, the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, or SPCA, and other organizations to intensify efforts to combat acts of cruelty to animals. Having consulted the Education Bureau and the Security Bureau, the reply to the question from Ms. Nixie LAM is as follows. 1. When studying amendments to the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Ordinance, CAP 169, the government understands there are divergent views among members of the public and stakeholders on the penalty levels for animal cruelty, enforcement powers of the department, and the regulation of the proper care of pet animals through legislation. In this connection, we shall adopt a prudent approach and study carefully. We note that the Society's current concern is largely focused on the need to intensify efforts to combat cruelty to animals. The Office of the Ombudsman's report also considers that there is less controversy in this area. It hence recommends amending the ordinance in phases, starting with increasing the penalty for cruelty to animals and strengthening the enforcement powers of AFCD staff. We will take into account the views of all parties in a holistic manner and strive to provide an update to the public within this year on the next phase of work. 2. We note that the community has yet to form consensus on whether legislation should be introduced to regulate the care and welfare of pets, but I believe you would all agree that publicity and education can play a significant role for pet owners to understand how to care for their pets and meet their needs for diet, living environment, and health, etc. The AFCD will continue to strengthen work in this aspect. Actively promote the message that pet keeping is a lifelong commitment, promoting pet adoption, educating the public the ideas of respect life and treat animals well, and be a responsible pet owner. Promotion channels include TV announcements in the public interest, AFCD's animal welfare thematic website, roving exhibitions, dog training courses, pet adoption days, etc. The AFCD and SPCA will jointly release a new series of education videos within next month to educate pet owners to properly care for their dogs, and promote harmonious coexistence of the dogs and people nearby. 3. The government has strengthened the cross-departmental collaboration in fostering an awareness for caring for animals among the next generation in schools. The specific work includes 1. The AFCD conducts free education seminars for schools every year. For the past 3 years, more than 470 school seminars have been held with more than 15,000 students participating every year, and they have been met with enthusiastic responses. These seminars are primarily aimed at kindergartens and primary schools, focusing on cultivating awareness of caring for animals and helping students understand that owning a pet is a lifelong commitment. The seminars explain in simple terms the different needs of animals, things to consider before getting a pet, how to properly care for a pet, and pets should not be abandoned. Students are also encouraged to opt for pet adoptions instead of buying. 2. The Hong Kong Police Force officially implemented the Animal Watchers program since 2021. It actively sets up animal care corners in schools and appoints Animal Watch program student ambassadors to care for the animals in the animal care corners. By collaborating with government departments and animal protection organizations, such as cooperating in organizing programs with the AFCD in Ocean Park, the program enhances students' pet care skills through diverse training. The police also partnered with the Jockey Club College of Veterinary Medicine and Life Sciences at the City University of Hong Kong to launch the AWP Student Mentorship Program, where students receive expert guidance on animal care from mentors with specialist knowledge. These activities deliver animal protection messages to students and cultivate their awareness on animal protection and prevention of cruelty to animals from an early stage. 3. At the same time, the Education Bureau has been committed to promoting the implementation of values education to help students understand, respect, and appreciate life and protect themselves, others, and animals through responsible words and actions. Learning elements related to life education have already been embedded across the kindergarten, primary, and secondary curricula, encompassing topics on animal protection. The Values Education Curriculum Framework further identifies strengthening life education as one of the major focuses for schools to strengthen and caring for animals, embracing empathy are suggested expected learning outcomes. On teacher training and resources, the Education Bureau continues to develop learning and teaching resources, including a themed webpage on animal protection, live event exemplars with themes on caring for animals, harmonious coexistence with nature, and living with pets for teachers' reference and use. The Bureau also provides relevant professional development programs, including experience sharing to enhance teachers' professional knowledge and teaching strategies in implementing life education. The AFCD and Education Bureau will continue to collaborate and provide appropriate teaching resources for teachers. President, the government has zero tolerance for acts of cruelty to animals. The AFCD will continue to jointly prevent and investigate suspected cases with the police and SPCA through multi-agency collaboration. The department will also deepen education and publicity efforts within schools and the community to foster the awareness of students and the general public on taking proper care of animals and prevention of cruelty to animals, such that pets would be taken care of and society would move towards harmonious coexistence of humans and animals. Ms. Nixie LAM. Well, President, according to the administration's reply, there are divergent views from the community on the penalty level of animal cruelty, enforcement powers, and regulation of proper care of pets. According to the government's paper, from April to July 2019, the government put forward a paper on enhancing animal welfare for public consultation. 88.6% of respondents agreed to introduce duty of care element in the legislative requirements to take care of animals. Only 0.6% of respondents were opposed to the idea. So I'm perplexed about the Secretary's reply. And I also like to follow up on the other parts to the reply. I see that only brief replies were given to parts 1 and 2 of my questions. So, in relation to animal welfare legislation, according to the paper, the government strives to give an account to the public about the next phase of work. I'm not too sure what it means. Does it mean that the public consultation will be published within this year, or will there be other papers available? Secretary. Well, I thank the member for the questions. I personally agree very strongly that pet owners are responsible for caring for their pets and that the pets' needs should be met, including the diet, living environment, and the pet owners should take responsibility. However, if we want to take it further, we need to work out the arrangements with different organizations and stakeholders, and upon careful consultation, we have received feedback and divergent views from them. Now, there are members of the community who are not fond of animals or pets. So in relation to any proposal to enhance animal welfare and introducing the duty of care element, they may not support our proposal. What's more important is that we need to allay concerns. For example, even some pet owners may say that I live in a very small place, and after you enact legislation, I may not be able to meet the legislative requirements on, say, living environment for pets, and that I may be breaching the law. And there are also other stakeholders who are concerned about the new requirements, and that as a result, in order not to be caught by the law, they will have to abandon their pets, and this will lead to an even greater problem. We also need to take care of, for example, stray animals, and that if we take the rescues to see a vet, then we may be punished for not doing so in time or not being accused of not taking good care of the rescued animals. So these are the concerns we need to address. In terms of our treatment to animals, I think the consensus that can be forged at this point is that we need to step up efforts in combating animal cruelty. In fact, this is also the Ombudsman's view. The Ombudsman has recommended implementing the proposal in phases, and we should take steps to tackle animal cruelty first. And that means we need to study the penalty level and see whether we need to enhance the penalties, and as well as giving the AFCD more enforcement powers, so that in phases we'll be able to step up our efforts. And this is our proposal. We will take it step by step. We'll come up with different options to consult groups and organizations, and we'll definitely take forward publicity and education through the work of other welfare groups. We will educate owners and members of the community about our treatment to stray dogs and cats. And in terms of legislation, I think that the primary concern is that we need to forge consensus in the community, and this is something we wish to achieve within this year. Next, Ms. Rebecca Chan. Thank you, President. The goal of amendments to the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Ordinance is to protect animals and to rescue as many animals as we can. Now, I'm concerned about some cases involving cruelty to animals. Very often the case will have to be concluded in the court, or the file will have to be closed at least before the animals can be rehomed. That happens not only to animal cruelty cases but also to the smuggling of pets. So my question for the administration is this: have you collected statistics about the time taken for the abused animal or smuggled animals to be put up for adoption by the public? How much time does it take? And will the government consider, at least before taking forward legislative amendments, shortening the time frame for adoption? Secretary, President, I do not have the figure at hand about the cases you mentioned. That is cases involving prosecution and the animals being placed in our animal management center. Now, your suggestion is to shorten the the waiting time for adoption. I need to go back and study this idea because, say, when it comes to prosecution or the handling of cases, the status and condition of the dog in question may be part of the evidence. So if we allow rehoming there and then, it may have an impact on the prosecution work. But I must say that for all dogs and cats sent to our AMCs, they will be under proper care by the AFCD, so as not to cause them any further harm. As for the figure you asked for, I will supply that later. Yes, please do that, Secretary. Next, Mr. Kenneth Lau. Well, there have been very rampant cases in recent years on social media platforms. Some pet shops even claim that pets can be sent to Hong Kong without going through the quarantine procedures. And this is smuggling of cats and dogs, and that these animals will be placed, under the trucks and stored in hidden compartments, and this causes great suffering to animals. Some even died in the process. My question is whether the administration will step up intelligence gathering with the collaborative efforts of the AFCD and the Customs and Excise Department so as to get better understanding of the smuggling situation and step up penalties so as to prevent harm to the smuggled animals, and more importantly, to safeguard our position as an international quarantine center. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Lau, for the question. Indeed, we are very concerned about the smuggling of cats and dogs, and that is why, starting from November 2023, the Customs and Excise Department has been working with the Shenzhen counterpart, and they have a joint enforcement action with a code name to combat the smuggling of animals. In fact, in 2025, we recorded 30 cases of smuggling of dogs and cats. The perpetrators were intercepted. Mr. Lau, you mentioned harm caused to animals in the process of smuggling, or that these animals might be trapped in a very small cage, and that itself constitutes cruelty to animal. So in that case, we don't just prosecute the perpetrator for smuggling, but for animal cruelty as well. In fact, last year we initiated 6 prosecutions on this basis. Next, Mr. Rock Chen. President, in the administration reply, it is said that the administration is taking forward legislative amendments in phases. Now, I also note that in the Ombudsman's investigation report, at the moment, our laws are not deterrent enough in penalizing those using illegal animal traps. So, Secretary, in preparing for legislative amendments, will you consider incorporating the use or possession of illegal animal traps so as to enhance penalty levels and increase deterrence? Secretary. Thank you, Member, for the question. Whilst we're considering legislative amendments, we'll also consider the matter in a holistic manner, including the handling of animal cruelty cases, AFCD's enforcement powers, and also penalties in relation to the use of animal traps. We will review all these matters. Now, in relation to illegal traps, last year, the AFCD conducted over 10,000 inspections. The AFCD seized over 80 so-called animal traps, and we also initiated 8 prosecutions. The AFCD will continue to conduct inspections stringently. Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, President. Like Ms. Nixie Lam, when it comes to caring for animals, the majority of Hong Kong people agree this is something we should do. That's more than 80% of respondents. However, we need to cater for the needs of different stakeholders. We must not underestimate the difficulty in the legislative process. We have owners of different animals, not only poultry, or pigs, but also pets such as lizards, cats, and dogs. We have volunteers, breeders, owners. We need to be very careful, but still, this is something we should do. We need to promote the message of responsible ownership. We need to enhance education because many owners do not even have the capability of keeping pets. For example, during the Easter holidays, people may give out rabbits. So pets become gifts. The government should consider at the points of sales enhancing regulation. That is, when the vendor sells an animal to a buyer, there should be a questionnaire survey, there should be scores awarded to make sure that at least we can avoid low-grade errors and make sure that those who buy pets have the means to take care of them. President, now, as I said, one of our focuses is to enhance public education and publicity so that members of the public who intend to keep pets would understand what it means to be a pet owner and what it entails so that they can become responsible pet owners. We work with different groups. For example, you mentioned questionnaire surveys at the point of sales. In fact, we have similar publicity and education programs, and we'll consider further stepping up our efforts to enhance education. Reverend Peter Kun. Thank you, President. I want to follow up on what Ms. Nixie LAM just now said, that is about law enforcement. According to the administration's reply, there are divergent views, and the administration has put forward various reasons. But my question is, despite the divergent views, and that happens quite often, would there be an objective standard to promote legislative amendments? Because otherwise, this will be an endless wait. President, I fully agree with the member's question, and I am all for taking it forward. Now, in fact, the government is striving to enact legislation, but we need to first forge consensus in the community and strike a balance. Now, we may have read on the newspaper that there are many supportive views, but when we actually get in touch with stakeholder groups, there may be those who object quite strongly, and they are not few in number. And that is why we need to be prudent. We want to put our heads together and strive to achieve a balance. This is something we must do. Members have asked questions on, this is a question on combating cruelty to animals, and the member has asked questions about legislative timetable and the various proposals. Would the Secretary consider very carefully and make a due report to this Council?